the last task that I will have to do for this game. I want you to create a variable score and tell me not only on which line of code I should increase it, but how much to the right should I do it. I will be quiet for a few seconds now in order for you to think which is the place to increase score in our code. Obviously this should happen when we collide with a node. And is there a place in our code that we check just for this? Well, I already have such an if. It checks if my y is equal to node y. And if this happens, I don't want only to print it, I want also to increase score. So I will write a code to increase score on this line of code, for example. If I'm kind of stupid, I can write it here. You can see that in both cases brackets is helping me by telling me where to write such a code. Of course, brackets is not perfect in this, and even if you use some other code editor, you can make your code correctly formatted if you are careful. Just write everything on the same rightness and as the other stuff that are nested as much as it. And if you're writing even more nested thing, write it one tabulation to the right than the previous thing. On this place I will increase score. This was one of your easiest tasks from your previous homework. I'm going to start talking now about your future homework. I already told you the hardest task of it. It is going to be try to write a new way to choose random corridor with equal probability without using a variable such as selected random. You will be able to do this if you think of what is the probability to creating a node in the top corridor, and what if you have else to this if. If you enter the else, you obviously don't need the node to be in the top corridor. Perhaps you should check in this if what are the probabilities of the other two corridors. Perhaps it will be really easy if you select second random number to think of what is going to be its value, so that according to its value you choose whether the middle or the bottom corridor. And by the way, now that I'm talking about else is just one more place where we can nest things, and we should write them a little bit to the right. I'm deleting this else now, and I want you to make it in your last homework task. Your first homework task, as always, is write our new knowledge math random, the M should be capital, with a good explanation to your sheet of paper. We already had console log and context view rect in our sheet of paper, then added creating variables and using variables. The fifth knowledge that we learned was if, and everything about the if. Our last knowledge is math random. You will be really surprised to learn how many things we can do with our knowledge. So one of the tasks that I want you to make is try to make totally different game that I haven't think for with only our current programming capabilities. I think there are a lot of games that you can think of, and I will be really amazed if you are able to create a game that is not a cloning of existing game, but really original idea that nobody else made so far, and only you can think of such a game. Okay, another tasks from your homework are going to be, this is one of the easier tasks, so I'm going to write it to the top, and in the end I'm going to put numbers on the tasks. So one of the first tasks is going to be write the score that the player got. We already know this value, we store it in score variable, but I want you just to print it. Try to think of a good place to print such a value. Your second task is going to be reduce lives remaining for each node missed. Another task from the hard tasks from your homework is going to be create a new folder for a game and call it and rename it to Guitar Hero 4 Corridors. This is not going to be very difficult, except that we will have to think of a way to create a node in a random of the 4 corridors, and also move the player with the mouse in those 4 corridors. Easier task from your homework is going to be move the player with different controls. This is a task that we already had, or actually we had a lot of tasks about different controls in our previous homework, but now we have to make it in 3 corridors. One specific way that I want you to try, which is going to be really crazy, and I'm not sure I've seen any game existing with such a controls, is on each cube the player moves not to upper or downward corridor, but to a random new corridor. This is going to be really crazy for the player. It's not hard to do it, but it's going to be really strange because you will have to press sometimes really fast, sometimes a lot of times, before the player reaches the corridor that you want him to be. So sometimes the player will even get the corridor that he wanted, but in his fastness he will press it one more time and actually miss the corridor that he wanted. So it's going to be a really crazy game. Try it. And I think probably this is all of your homeworks. And the last task that I will add for your homework is going to be again a creative task and perhaps a little bit mathematical. So what if we don't need a random corridor out of 2, 3 or 4? How can we use the result of math random, which is between 0 and 1, to get a value between 0 and 800, for example, which can be a good value for a random X of a new enemy or something else, or perhaps 0 and 600, which will be useful if the enemies or nodes are coming from the right. Try to think of a simple mathematical formula that will increase our small random number between 0 and 1 to a bigger random number between 0 and 600. I think these are going to be your tasks for now. I'm pretty sure that all of you can accomplish at least the first tasks from our homework. It's really important for me to have a good sheet of paper with all our knowledge, and math random is the new knowledge from today. But we learned one more thing that I want you to remember, and from now on be very careful with. I want you to write a correctly formatted code, and each line to start so much to the right as much as the line is nested in previous functions or ifs or other stuff. See you in next lesson. Good luck.